My sociopath ex tried to ruin my life with a vicious smear campaign. He thought he would destroy me. What he didn't count on was me playing his game and winning. This is the story of how I legally and methodically dismantled his fantasy world and got the closure he never, ever wanted me to have. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. These stories take hours to craft. Your support keeps them coming. That sounds like a declaration of war, doesn't it? But it is a war that many of you watching might be fighting in silence. You're fighting for your reputation, your sanity, and your future against someone who seems to hold all the cards. The person I am talking about is a specific kind of abuser, the narcissistic sociopath. Now, that is not a formal diagnosis you'll find in a medical textbook. It is what many of us call that chilling combination of narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder, clinically distinct, but sometimes found together. These individuals are defined by a terrifying void where empathy should be, replaced by massive self-importance, a thirst for control, and a sadistic enjoyment of chaos. If you've been with one, you know the cycle. The intoxicating high of the idealization phase, the soul-crushing devaluation, and finally, the brutal discard and the character assassination that follows. For a long time, I was the victim in my own story. I was confused, isolated, and drowning in the sea of lies he was spreading about me. I felt powerless. The world only saw his carefully constructed mask and heard only his twisted version of our story. He was counting on me to break. He was counting on me to just disappear. But he miscalculated. He forgot that when you push someone to the absolute edge, they have two choices: fall or learn how to fly. I chose to fly. This isn't just a story about getting even. This is a strategic blueprint. This is for every person who has been lied about, manipulated, and discarded. This is how you stop being a pawn in their sick game and become the grandmaster of your own life. This is how you dismantle their reality, piece by piece, until the only thing left is their own hollow reflection staring back at them. To understand how I destroyed his fantasy world, you have to understand how meticulously he built it. Our relationship didn't start with red flags. It started with fireworks. The kind of beginning Hollywood scripts are made of. He wasn't just charming, he was a chameleon, mirroring my deepest hopes and dreams back to me with stunning precision. He was the living, breathing embodiment of a soulmate. This is a classic tactic called love bombing, a key part of the idealization phase. Narcissistic types don't fall in love. They select a target and launch a campaign of overwhelming affection. He'd text me from the moment I woke up to the moment I went to sleep. He praised my intelligence, my ambition, my sense of humor, everything my previous, healthier relationships had appreciated, but he put it on steroids. He made me feel seen in a way I had never experienced. He shared his vulnerabilities early. Stories of past hurts that were perfectly engineered to get my empathy and create a false sense of instant intimacy. He was building a story where he was the misunderstood hero, and I was the one person who finally got him. It was intoxicating. It felt like I won some kind of cosmic lottery. But this phase isn't about connection for them. It's about investment. They're getting you hooked, creating a powerful bond they plan to exploit later. He created a whole universe for us, a bubble where it was just the two of us against the world. Inside this bubble, he was perfect. The successful entrepreneur, the devoted partner, the intellectual equal. He showed me the life I wanted and made it seem like it was only possible with him. This perfect world he built was a gilded cage. It was beautiful, it was shiny, and it was my prison. The bars were made of compliments, the lock was forged from shared secrets, and the whole thing was built on a foundation of lies. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't his partner. I was just the main character in a fantasy built for his ego, and the front door had just locked behind me. The shift was so subtle at first, I almost missed it, like a tiny crack in a wall. It's easy to ignore until the whole house starts shaking. The fireworks of the idealization phase faded out, replaced by a creeping dread. The man who put me on a pedestal began to subtly, then not so subtly, chip away at my worth. This is the devaluation phase, where the mask slips and the real person underneath is revealed. It started with small things: a backhanded compliment about my outfit, a joke at my expense in front of friends that just felt off. When I'd bring it up, he'd use the master tool of the manipulator: gaslighting. "You're being too sensitive," he'd say, his voice a perfect mix of confusion and concern. "It was a joke. I can't believe you're turning this into a fight." And I would end up apologizing, questioning myself. Was I too sensitive? Was I overreacting? That's the goal: to destabilize you, to make you question your own reality so you're easier to control. Soon, it escalated. He'd accidentally hide my car keys when I was about to see my friends, making me late and causing friction. He'd start fights right before important work events, making sure I was rattled and couldn't perform at my best. He began planting seeds of doubt about my friends and family, isolating me from my support system. "Your friends don't really like me," he'd say. "They're just trying to come between us." Then came the accusations. He'd baselessly accuse me of cheating, demanding to check my phone. If I resisted, it was proof I was hiding something. If I complied, he'd find an innocent message and twist it into evidence of my betrayal. It was a dizzying, no-win situation. This isn't insecurity, it's a calculated strategy to keep you on the defensive, constantly proving your loyalty. He'd often get aggressive when drinking, his words becoming weapons designed to hit my deepest insecurities. The next morning, he'd have no memory of it, or even worse, he'd blame me. "You know how I get when you push my buttons," he'd say, shifting the responsibility without a flicker of shame. That total lack of accountability is a hallmark of an antisocial personality. Nothing is ever their fault. I was living in a constant state of anxiety, walking on eggshells. The confident person I was before I met him was fading, replaced by a nervous shadow of myself. The gilded cage wasn't beautiful anymore. I could feel the cold, hard bars. He wasn't my partner. He was my warden. And the cracks in his fantasy world were becoming gaping holes, revealing the monster underneath. The end came as abruptly and brutally as the beginning was magical. No discussion, no closure. One day he was there, the next he was gone. He just vanished, leaving a silence that was more deafening than his rage. This is the discard, the final and cruelest stage of the cycle. You're treated like an object that has outlived its use, tossed aside without a second thought. But the discard is never just a breakup. For someone like him, the relationship isn't over until they've won. And winning means controlling the narrative, completely. It means destroying your reputation so no one will ever believe you. It means making sure that in the eyes of the world, he's the victim, and you are the villain. The smear campaign began almost immediately. He contacted our mutual friends, my family, and colleagues, weaving a masterful tale of how much he'd suffered. He painted me as unhinged, manipulative, and unstable. The very things he'd done to me, he now accused me of a classic tactic called projection. He told people I was a crazy ex obsessed with him, and that he had to leave for his own safety. The lies spread like wildfire. People I'd known for years started looking at me differently. Some became distant. Others were openly hostile. I was unfriended, uninvited, and met with suspicious looks in my own community. He was systematically isolating me, turning my own support system against me. How do you defend yourself against lies whispered behind your back? Frantically trying to explain my side would only make me look exactly like the crazy person he was painting me to be. He'd laid the perfect trap. And a smear campaign like this? It's not just random cruelty. It serves two sick purposes. First, it discredits you so that if you ever try to expose their abuse, no one will listen. Second, It gives them a fresh dose of narcissistic supply. They get to be the center of attention, soaking up sympathy as the victim while knowing they're still hurting you from a distance. He thought he had delivered the final blow. He thought he had won. For weeks, I was just adrift. I was grieving the man I thought he was, the future I thought we had, and the friends I was now losing. I felt this crushing shame, just like he wanted me to. You start to internalize their narrative, thinking, maybe I am the problem. I remember one night scrolling through social media and seeing a picture of him with our former friends. He was smiling, holding court. In the comments, people praised him for being so strong. And in that moment, something inside me didn't break. It snapped into focus with cold, hard clarity. I realized I'd been playing a game without even knowing it. He was 10 moves ahead, manipulating the board, the pieces, and the rules, and I'd been letting him. My grief turned into a cold, focused rage. I was done being a victim. I was done letting him write my story. I made a decision right then. I wasn't going to sink to his level. No smear campaign of my own, no petty public fights. That would only validate his story and drain my energy. No, I was going to fight back on my own terms. I would use logic, strategy, and the very system he thought he was above. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. My goal wasn't to expose him to the world, but to dismantle the fantasy world he lived in, where he was an untouchable god. I was going to do it legally, methodically, and with a clear conscience. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The first move in this chess game was the hardest, and it happened entirely in my own head. Before I could do anything else, I had to completely rewire how I thought. I had to get to a place of what some therapists call radical acceptance. It means fully and completely accepting reality as it is, without judgment or denial. For me, that meant accepting that my ex was who he was, that he didn't love me and probably never did. It meant accepting that he felt zero remorse and would never apologize or take responsibility. That is a bitter pill to swallow. You want to believe there is good in people, to hope for closure. But with a sociopath, that hope is a weapon they use against you. Every time you reach out hoping for an apology, you're just giving them another chance to manipulate you. So, I had to kill that hope. I literally wrote it down and said it out loud. He will never be sorry. He will never change. He will not give me closure. I had to mourn the man I thought he was, and accept the predator he actually is. Once I did that, the next step was emotional detachment. I had to start viewing his actions not as personal attacks, but as the predictable behavior of a disordered individual. I started thinking of myself as a scientist, observing a specimen. When he'd try to provoke me through a mutual friend, instead of feeling hurt, I'd step back and think, interesting, triangulation, predictable. This emotional detachment is your armor. It protects you from their favorite weapon, your own emotions. A sociopath feeds on your reaction, your anger, your tears, your desperation that's their fuel. When you stop reacting, emotionally, you start to starve them. This doesn't happen overnight. It takes practice, journaling, and constantly reminding yourself of who they really are. You can't play chess if you're weeping over the board. You have to become calm and calculated. This is when I stopped being a character in his drama and started being the architect of my own victory. Once my mind was fortified, it was time to get to work. Step 2 was to become a silent, meticulous archivist of my own abuse. I called this my intel phase. This is where the legally part of my plan started to get real. My ex, like most people like him, felt untouchable. He believed his lies were flawless. He underestimated me. And that was his biggest mistake. I decided to use his arrogance against him. I stopped deleting his old messages. Instead, I started organizing them. Every abusive email, every gaslighting text, every rambling, angry voicemail, I compiled it all. I created a password-protected folder on my computer and took screenshots of everything. I organized it by date, creating a timeline of the abuse, the love-bombing messages, the first insults, the baseless accusations. It was all there, in his own words. I didn't stop there. I started documenting the smear campaign. If a friend forwarded me a slanderous text from him, I de-screenshot it. I created a document where I logged the date, the lie, and who he told it to. I was no longer a victim reliving trauma. I was a prosecutor building a case. Every piece of documentation was a brick in my defense and a crack in his fantasy. Courts and lawyers don't run on feelings. They run on facts and data. My goal was to have an undeniable mountain of it. The key is to do this silently. You don't tell them. You don't threaten them with it. You just become a quiet, diligent observer, gathering the data they so freely give you. They're often so sloppy and so consumed with their chaos that they leave a digital trail of their own patterns. This file was my secret weapon, ready to be used with surgical precision when the time was right. Before I get into the next step, the one where we start taking back the narrative, I want to say that if you're going through this, you are not alone. Documenting abuse can be overwhelming. So I've put together a free guide on documenting abuse for legal protection. It's linked in the description. It asks the framework I use to turn his chaos into my evidence. It shows you what to save, how to organize it, and how to build your file. Download it, use it, protect yourself. Okay, now let us talk about taking the fight public. With my emotional armor on and my evidence file locked and loaded, it was time to deal with the smear campaign. This is a delicate step. The goal isn't to start a public war, but to perform a quiet, strategic course correction. Fighting fire with fire just gets you burned and makes you look just as unstable as they claim you are. I made a short list of the key people whose opinions genuinely mattered. My closest friends, my immediate family, and a few colleagues who had been exposed to his lies. This wasn't about convincing his new fans or his flying monkeys. This was about shoring up my foundation. I approached each of them calmly and privately. No hysterics, no drama. I just said something like, I know you've probably heard some things about my breakup with X's name. I'm not going to get into a mudslinging contest, but I want you to know the relationship was abusive, and the stories he's telling aren't true. My priority is my safety and healing, and I hope you can trust my character. I kept it short, factual, and focused on my experience. I never use phrases like, he's a sociopath or he's a narcissist, because that can sound like bitter armchair diagnosing. Instead, I described his actions. He frequently lied. He was verbally abusive. He is now spreading false information about me. For a select few, my most trusted circle, I showed them a tiny, curated piece of evidence, a single text that completely contradicted his story. You have to do this carefully. You're not trying to prove a case to the public. You're just giving a key ally the undeniable truth so they can be a rock for you. This calm, dignified approach was the opposite of what he expected. He was waiting for me to have a public meltdown. When I didn't, it was confusing for him. My public silence and composure, contrasted with his frantic storytelling, started to plant seeds of doubt. Eventually, people who know you see that the lies don't match the person they know. By refusing to play his game, I took his power away. This is the step where we take the fight to an arena where charm and manipulation don't work. This is where the word legally in the title takes center stage. After I started my quiet counter-narrative, his attempts to get a reaction became more desperate. The passive-aggressive posts turned into more direct harassment. He started driving by my house. His behavior was escalating, which is common when they feel their control slipping. This was the moment I was waiting for. This was when I took my intel file and walked into a lawyer's office. I found an attorney with experience in domestic harassment and defamation. I didn't present my story with emotion. I presented it with evidence. I opened my laptop and showed her the timeline, the abusive texts, the threatening voicemails, the screenshots of the smear campaign. My lawyer looked at me and said, "This is one of the most well-documented cases I've ever seen." Based on that evidence, she drafted a formal cease and desist letter. This legal document outlined his harassing behavior and stated that if it didn't stop immediately, we would pursue further legal action, like a restraining order or a lawsuit for defamation. The letter was sent via certified mail, so he had to sign for it. He couldn't claim he never got it. For a narcissist, a letter from a lawyer is a profound injury to the ego. It's a message that their game is over. Suddenly, the fight isn't in the court of public opinion, where they can lie and charm their way through. It's in a system with rules and consequences, where evidence is king. In my case, the harassment stopped. Cold. The public smearing went silent. He was a bully who just ran into someone who wasn't scared and had a much bigger weapon, the law. Now, a letter like this isn't a magic wand. Its effectiveness can vary, and for some it's just the first step. But it's about drawing a hard line in the sand and showing them their fantasy world is about to collide with real-world consequences. It was the moment the power dynamic shifted for good. After the legal firewall was up and the attacks had stopped, it was time for the final move, the checkmate. And it's the most powerful blow you can ever deliver to a sociopath's ego. True, unadulterated indifference. A person like this needs to know they have an impact, that they can get under your skin. Your love is supply. Your hate is supply. Your fear is the best supply of all. The only thing that is not supply is your complete and total indifference. It tells them they're so insignificant, they don't even register on your emotional radar. It's the psychological equivalent of erasing them. With the legal threat hanging over his head, his only tool left was to watch from a distance, hoping to see me miserable. So, I did the one thing he never expected. I became incredibly, unapologetically happy. I poured all the energy I'd been wasting on him back into myself. I reconnected with my real friends. I excelled at work. I traveled. I laughed. I built a life that was vibrant and completely mine. I blocked him on everything and told my friends I didn't want any updates on his life. I truly did not care what he was doing. He had been surgically removed from my life and my mind. Living well is more than just the best revenge. It is a strategic weapon. In the sociopath's fantasy, they are the main character in everyone's story. They believe you are still obsessed with them. When you live a full, happy, successful life without them, you rob them of that fantasy. You prove you're not just fine without them, you're better. Your success is a glaring testament to their irrelevance. I heard through the grapevine he couldn't stand it. He couldn't understand why I wasn't broken. My indifference, my success, my joy, it was the ultimate destruction of his ego. It proved he had no lasting impact. He was just a sad, empty man I no longer thought about. His fantasy world collapsed because its main character had been reduced to a footnote in my much more interesting story. So, how do you reclaim your power? It wasn't about destroying him. It was about destroying the illusion he built, the false narrative he tried to force on my life. This whole process wasn't about revenge. It was about reclamation. It started with a fundamental shift in my own mind, accepting the truth and detaching emotionally. Then, I quietly became the observer, gathering the facts. From there, I took back my story with dignity, speaking only to those who mattered. Then came the legal firewall, using the system as a shield. And the final checkmate move? True indifference. Building a life so full and joyful that he became completely irrelevant. The closure they will never give you is something you have to take for yourself. It doesn't come from a dramatic confrontation. It comes from the quiet, powerful knowledge that you outsmarted them, that you played their game, but with integrity and strategy. It comes from the peace of knowing they no longer occupy any space in your head. My story is just one of many. And I know thousands of you have fought similar battles. Have you ever had to fight back against a smear campaign? Share your story of strength in the comments. Let's create a community of support and strategy where we can all learn from each other. Your experience is valuable, and your voice matters. If this story resonated with you, and you want more content on reclaiming your power after toxic relationships, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. And always remember, you are not alone in this fight.